Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and this is my full review on my latest keyboard purchase, the Yamaha PSR SX720. This is one of Yamaha's higher-end arranger keyboards. Now, just a heads up, the PSR SX720 has a crazy amount of features to talk about, so this review is really long. It's over 1.5 hours. But it is a pretty detailed overview, so there is a lot of content here. And I have also included chapter links at the bottom of the description below, so you can jump to different topics or sections as you like, or you can take advantage of those chapter links to watch this review in multiple sittings by being able to quickly come back and pick up where you left off. Now, if you'd still prefer a much shorter summary review, I did do one of those as well. I'll include a link to that in the description below and up here somewhere. Now, something else to quickly note here is that I actually bought the SX720 to start using right away as my new stage keyboard, even though technically it's not a stage keyboard. So part of this review will be to go over why I chose the PSR SX720 over one of my favorite stage keyboards ever, the Yamaha CK61, even though the SX720 costs about $500 more. And I'll also provide a summary of how well the SX720 has been working for me as a stage keyboard because I've already used it on a few gigs with my new band. And I'll also address why I chose the SX720 over the entry-level model in the SX lineup, the PSR SX600. So let's check out the Yamaha PSR SX720. Okay, so where does the Yamaha PSR SX720 fit into Yamaha's keyboard lineup? Yamaha's got 3 tiers of arranger keyboards. Their entry-level tier is the PSR-E series. So the PSR-E 283, 383, 473, and EW 425. The PSR-E series prices range from about $160 to about $500. Then their pro-level tier is the SX series. The PSR SX600 sells for about $1,100. The SX720 sells for about $1,600, and the PSR SX920 sells for about $2,500. Then the top level tier is the GNOS series. The GNOS 2 currently sells for a whopping $6,500. Okay, so why did I choose the Yamaha PSR SX720 at about $1,600 as opposed to the Yamaha PSR SX600 at about $1,100? I'm not going to deep dive into all the specific differences between these, but I do want to make a couple of comments. When I first started considering one of these arrangers instead of the Yamaha CK61 for my new stage keyboard, I was originally looking at the SX600 because it's only $100 more than the CK61. But the SX720 has some extra features that I thought would be more than worthwhile, especially since I am intending on making this my main keyboard for the long run. And those extra features would include the following. A significantly better key action. The SX720 has the same FSB key action found on the CK61, which I am a huge fan of. The SX600 uses the same action found on the PSR-E series keyboards, which is okay, but the FSB action is far better. There's 5-pin MIDI in and out ports, which could be super handy down the road if I want to use a second keyboard to control some of the SX720's sounds. There's a chord looper or sequencer that allows you to record chord charts and play them back using any of the built-in styles. Given that making my own backing tracks is something I've always been interested in, this is a pretty cool feature for me. There's a touchscreen which, given the ability to name registrations, search using text, etc., is a lot nicer. And the operating system and workflow is far better. It's actually inherited from the GNOS series, which, while the SX600s is a lot closer to the DGX 670. And there's far more internal memory at 1 gigabyte as opposed to 20 megabytes. So to be honest, I might have gone ahead with the SX600 anyways if it had the FSB key action, but that's something you can't change and you've got to live with. So with that and all the extras features in mind, I decided to spend a little bit extra and get the PSR SX720. Okay, so that explains why I was willing to pay a little bit more to upgrade from the SX600 to the SX720, but I thought I should also just briefly address why I wasn't willing to upgrade even further to the SX920. The main reason is probably pretty apparent just from the price. The SX720 sells for about $1,600. The SX920 sells for about $2,500, so that's about a $900 increase in cost. I can almost buy a Yamaha CK61 and Yamaha PSR SX720 just for the price of the SX920. Now that being said, the SX920 does offer quite a few improvements over the SX720. with some notable examples being the 920 has the CFX Grand piano sample, which is an upgrade over the Concert Grand on the 720. In addition to AWM stereo sampling, the SX20 also has AEM technology for tone generation. There are over 200 additional voices, and some of those also offer Super Articulation 2, which is not available on the SX720. There are 125 extra styles. It also has a display out, so you can actually hook up an external screen or monitor or something, and then get your keyboard screen displayed on that or mirrored on that. The SX920 also offers Bluetooth functionality, and it has 4 times the internal memory at 4 gigs as opposed to 1 gig. And there's also additional outputs available and 50 watts of speaker power instead of 30 watts. Okay, so all that being said, the main reason I was willing to upgrade from the SX600 to the 720 was to get that FSB key action, which is a huge upgrade. But the SX920 has the identical FSB action. So while all those additional upgrades that I just finished mentioning would be nice to have, for me, to be honest, the only features that I listed there that would actually mean a lot to me would be the additional outputs and the 50 watts of speaker power instead of 30, but that is definitely not worth $900 to me. But that doesn't mean that it might not be a worthwhile upgrade for you if all of those extra features are things that are important to you. Okay, so key action. The PSR SX720 uses Yamaha's FSB action, which stands for Future System Basic. This is apparently a new and improved version of a super popular FS action found a while ago on the FX1 organs that came out in the 80s. I actually ordered my SX720 without even seeing it in person first, but I wasn't worried about the key action because the Yamaha CK61, which I used to own, also has the FSB action, and I absolutely love it. While the action isn't technically weighted, it does have kind of a semi-weighted feel to it. For a non-weighted synth action, it has a heavier than normal initial key resistance and an increased key travel, which really helps you play piano pieces expressively and with more control, while still being light and smooth enough to play organ pieces with palm slides and glissandos, that type of thing, much easier than you can on a fully weighted piano. So as someone who has typically preferred fully weighted actions, but on the light side, how do I like this FSB action? I like this action a lot. For playing in a band, lots of players want the best of all worlds, and they're going to be willing to carry multiple keyboards to practices and gigs so they can have different key actions available. A fully weighted digital piano, then maybe a semi-weighted organ with waterfall keys, and then maybe a non-weighted synth. Well, I am far too lazy to be doing that, and my preference is to try and bring one keyboard that has a key action that's good enough for all my needs, and the FSB action from Yamaha, it's turning into my favorite key action for meeting that need. So as I mentioned previously, the FSB action was enough justification all by itself for me to spend the extra money on the PSR SX720 as opposed to saving a bit and going with the PSR SX600, which shares that cheaper key action found on the psr-e series. I'm super familiar with that action. It's on my PSR E383 and PSR EW425. It's not bad, but the FSB action is a really big step up in playability and quality. It feels noticeably firmer, better built, and it's much quieter, softer, and just more pleasing to play. Okay, so the user interface. In a word, fantastic. It's similar to my Yamaha DGX670 in that there's a nice big color screen and a whole bunch of dedicated buttons to help you find things quickly, but the similarity kind of ends there, especially with the workflow. The user interface and workflow is exponentially nicer, easier, and far more intuitive than the user interface on the DGX670, which is really good, but it can be a little bit convoluted and confusing at times. Part of this difference is actually because of the touchscreen. When I was first comparing the PSR SX720 with the PSR SX600, which doesn't have a touchscreen, I didn't think that the touchscreen would make much of a difference. But as it turns out, I was wrong. Not only does it make it super quick and easy to access submenus, adjust settings, and make choices, but it also makes it just much simpler to find things. Also makes it much easier to enter text. You can name your registrations, search the 1400 sounds using just a text wildcard search. While I've never seen a PSR SX600 or the top-of-the-line GNOS in person, apparently the operating system and user interface from the SX720 is actually inherited from the GNOS. And from the GNOS videos I've watched online, you can tell they're pretty similar. while the interface on the non-touch screen entry-level PSR SX600 is a lot closer to that of the DGX 670. So that explains why it's such a great user experience. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the front panel and the user interface. Okay, so just a quick intro to the front panel on the Yamaha PSR SX720. We've got a few customizable live controls, including the joystick, which has both an X and a Y axis. There's a couple of assignable buttons right here as well, and then we've got these two live control knobs. Now, something cool here is for the two knobs and the joystick, you can set up 3 configurations for those that you can quickly switch between using this assign button. So if I toggle through the assign button, you can see I'm toggling between 3, 2, 1, etc. So I can go between these different choices. So how do I actually set those up? Well, to do that, if I press live control on the menu, I can choose between setting up the knob or the X and the Y axis for the joystick. And then for settings 1, 2, and 3, I can choose what I want it to do, both knob 1 and knob 2. And you can see there's a ton of stuff in here that I can choose from. And then once I've got that all set up the way that I want it, then I can quickly just toggle between those using this assign button. And that's going to change the settings for the live control knobs and the joystick. Now, I do also have those 2 assignable buttons down here. Now, those are not part of that assign 1, 2, 3 thing, but you can assign different functions and stuff to those buttons. Then in the bottom left, we've got the style control section with buttons for pretty much everything you're ever going to need. There's 3 intros that you can choose between. Then there's the buttons to switch between the 4 style variations, button to trigger a break, and then the 3 ending options. And then you've got sync, stop, sync, start, and start, stop for the accompaniment. Now over to the left of those, there's this OTS link button, and that is a button where I can toggle it on or off. And what that does is if it's on, then when I switch between variations, let's say I go from variation 1 to variation 2, it's also going to switch from one touch setting 1 or 2. So I've got different voices set up in my different one touch setting buttons. If that OTS link button is on, then whenever I switch the variations, the one touch settings are going to switch automatically instead of having me switch them manually. So that's pretty cool. And then there's also a toggle button here to have enable or disable an auto fill-in whenever you switch variations. So you can set that the way that you like it. Now to the top left section. We've got buttons here for both recording and playing back both MIDI and audio recordings. Then we have category buttons for drilling down into the different styles when you're making a style selection. And so when you're doing this, you can use these buttons or you can use the touch screen. So for example, if I press rock and retro pop, it's going to open up rock and retro pop. If I just go back out to here, I could also just hit the style and then choose the categories in here. So it's kind of cool. You can, if you're somebody that prefers the buttons to the on-screen interface, you've got options there. Then we've got buttons below that for transposing up and down for setting the tempo, and there's also a tap tempo button. Then we've got the mixer button. You're going to be using that button a lot. This is going to open up the on-screen mixer, which is a pretty central spot where you're going to be able to configure a ton of settings for your voices, accompaniment, and even your mic and your auxiliary in. Then we have the Chord Looper controls. I'm going to be going over the Chord Looper a little bit late in the review. And then we have this direct access button. This is one of my favorite buttons that I was really glad to see on this keyboard that I had on my DGX 670. This can help you drill down to find something you want quickly, but by basically holding this button down while you press a control that is associated with what you're trying to find. For example, if I hold down direct access and I press a style, it's going to take me direct to the style page on the mixer screen where I can adjust the different style parts. I could enable or disable them, that type of thing. Or I could even hold it down and then press a pedal. And then it takes me to the page where I configure what the foot pedals do. So that's a super handy button if you're, especially when you're new on the keyboard. Just helps you find something that you're looking for quickly. Then below the screen, we've got these 6 assignable buttons. These aren't meant for live control settings. They're meant to open up menus, screens, or assign functions that you want quick access to. But you can customize them. Then at the bottom of the screen itself, there's also 6 more customizable on-screen buttons. When I first got the keyboard, I was assuming that these were just labels telling me what these buttons did. Not the case. I've got 6 options here that have nothing to do with those 6 options there. So basically I've got 12 assignable buttons that I can configure to bring up settings and stuff that I tend to want to use a lot. So I'm going to come back to the screen itself in a minute, but first let's move over to the right side. Okay, so just to the right of the screen, we've got a menu button. This basically opens up a settings menu with all sorts of sub-menus in it. You're going to be in here a lot. And you can go back and forth between menu 1 and menu 2, either by just toggling that button or hitting the on-screen button. Got a mic setting button here, which is super handy because this opens up the mic screen where you can set different effects and different settings, that type of thing. But more importantly for me, this is great. I'm actually using this mic right now for this video, and I can have it on talk, so I've got no reverb, or if I turn it to vocal, then there's going to be reverb on there, so I can switch back and forth easily. I'm actually probably going to program one of these assignable buttons in here to do that very thing, switch back and forth between vocal and talk, so that it's just one less step. Then we have the playlist button. I'm going to be going over the playlist features later, but this is super, super handy, and one of the best features actually about this keyboard that I didn't even know it was there when I bought it, but I'm going to be going over that later. Now, if you're somebody that prefers the tactile button controls versus a touchscreen, then you can do things like use the dial to make selections, or you can decrease or increase, press enter to make a selection, press exit to leave, that type of thing. Then up in the top right, we've got the voice category selection button. So it's basically the same way, works the same way as the style ones did. Got the toggle button to turn harmony and arpeggio on or off. And you can apply the harmony and arpeggio to all the voices or just some of them. Be going over that a bit later. You can also turn on auto sustain if you want just like a panel sustain to be in effect or not. And down here, we've got the part select buttons. This is where you both select your voices and also turn them on or off for your left, right 1, right 2, or right 3 voices. So right now, for right 1, if I press the, it's the only one that's enabled, and if I press the top button, it's going to take me to the voice selection screen. So it's a grand piano voice. Let's go to right 3. Let's choose, see, I'm on a pad here. But you're not hearing that, but you will hear it when I turn right 3 on. So this is super cool, and it's really nice that you've got that nice visual indication of what's on and what's not on. And you also have that on the screen, so while you're playing, you know exactly what's going to happen when you turn on a different voice. You can also see that that right 1 is enabled. That's lit up here. If I turn that off, then it does it comes back on when I turn it back on. So and you can also do these, turn these on and off here as well if you want on the screen. So once again, touchscreen buttons, your choice. Then down at the bottom, we've got the registration memory section. There are 8 buttons to quickly switch between the 8 possible configurations you've set up for your current registration bank, which I'm going to be going over this later, but that should be a song. The blue lights means that you've got settings set up in those buttons, and the orange light means it's actually active at the moment, so that's the one you're actually using. Then we've got the one-touch settings. Each style has 4 preset voice configurations that are ready to go, so you can switch between those here. So if I press 1, that's going to be that one, 2, 3, and 4. And those are set up basically, from Yamaha to match the 80s pop ballad style. So, and as I mentioned earlier, if I enable that OTS link, then when I switch style variations from style 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's also going to switch these one-touch settings. Then we have buttons for multi-pad control. You can save MIDI or audio data to these buttons and trigger them as you play. You can even set them to loop. And then there are buttons over on the far right-hand side for moving up or down an octave. This is super handy for a 61-key keyboard. Okay, so now on to the highlight of the PSR SX720's user interface, the touchscreen. Okay, so the screen is really nice and clear and super easy to read. Although I have to confess, one of the first gigs that I used this keyboard on was actually an outside festival gig. And in the sun, the screen can be challenging to see, but now that I know that, I can prepare for it with some type of shading strategy. Now, there is a massive amount of info on the main screen, and all super useful. The top left has the current tempo and a measure counter, which is really, really cool, and a visual beat indicator as a style plays. So for example, if I just press start on this style, can see that scrolling through the measure, and then you can see the measure counter moving. And then your current registration and your registration bank within that registration will be shown on the screen as well. And you can name those. Then you can have your current voice parts, whether they're active or not. Super cool. And then if you've got a MIDI song loaded or an audio song loaded and ready to go up in that track section, then those are going to be displayed here. Current style is shown with the time signature, and if you've also got the multi-pads displayed here. And then there's those 6 on-screen assignable buttons at the bottom. So every on-screen item on the PSR SX720 allows you to press it and drill down into it. So that is really what makes this so extremely easy to use. Like on the DGX 670, it had a really nice full color screen, but then to be able to figure out how to do things, change things, you had to figure out what buttons to press. And like I said before, once you get used to how all of the buttons work, if you prefer the buttons to the tactile on-screen interface, then to each his own, and you can use either method. So I'm just going to load up a song here very quickly. I'm going to load up Blinding Lights, just so I can show you something. Other thing that you can do is you can display the score for a song. So if I start playing this, you're going to see the chords at the top as well. So that's super cool. You can display the score as it plays, and you can also display lyrics as it plays. And the chords are also displayed on this screen as well, also super cool. And you can also display a text viewer, so there's nothing in this particular song, but if I wanted to, I could have whatever I wanted as a text file imported in here and displayed there while the song plays. So that's just a quick overview of the user interface on the Yamaha PSR SX720. I have to say it's by far the best user interface I've ever seen. Nothing else even comes close, and a lot of it's just because lots of context-sensitive buttons that make sense, the workflow makes sense, but it's the touch screen that really kind of pushes it over the edge to being awesome. This operating system is actually inherited from the GNOS keyboards, which sell for over $6,000 US, so no surprise that the workflow is really good. Okay, so now that I've gotten all my excitement for the user interface out of the way, let's talk about the 1913 voices and 128 notes of polyphony on the Yamaha PSR SX720. The sound source on the SX720 is AWM stereo sampling, and those voices are made up of 1,377 voices, 56 drum and sound effects kits, and 480 XG voices. These voices include 9 Super Articulation Plus, 252 Super Articulation, 55 organ flutes, 54 mega voices, 31 sweet, 87 cool, and 131 live voices. So what do all these fancy voice category names mean? Well, the sweet, cool, and live voices use advanced sampling, and they most often have some DSP effects already applied built into them. Many of the electric pianos and sampled organ voices use this technology. Now, the super articulation voices have had expressive nuances added to the samples to create a more realistic sounding instrument. Some of these will also have variations of the voice that you can manually trigger using assignable controls like the assignable buttons, joystick, or a pedal. Some may only have one variation, and others like the Super Articulation Plus voices may have up to 3 variations. So mega voices are actually not intended to be used live. That's because with mega voices, you actually get a different sample depending on your velocity. So that would be pretty challenging to use live. These voices are used by the accompaniment styles. You can mess around with them if you accompany them with some arpeggios, etc., but it's not something I'm likely to bother with. And FYI, you won't actually even see these in the main voice selection lists. You have to kind of go looking for them. So the XG voices are a bank of general MIDI compliant voices that can be used live if you like, but are mostly intended for using to play back MIDI files. So if a MIDI file specifies a certain piano voice, you're going to get it. You may also find some useful extra or unique voices if you browse through all of these. One thing to note here is that the XG voices on the PSR SX720 are considerably higher quality than the XG Lite voices you find on the less expensive PSR-E series. Okay, organ flute voices. These are in addition to a number of sampled organ voices. The sampled ones may have been sampled from a real organ, like a Hammond B3, but they're static samples. You can't adjust the drawbars, etc., or do anything to modify the sound. That's where these organ flute voices come in. These are meant to more closely replicate various organs by giving you the ability to adjust drawbars and other settings on the fly like you would on a real organ or on a clone wheel organ. This is the fact that this keyboard has these organ flute voices is one of the reasons I was kind of willing to go this way as opposed to the Yamaha CK61. Now, whether or not technically this means that the PSR SX720 has an actual organ engine or not, like actual clone wheels do, so keyboards like the Hammond SK Pro, Hammond M Solo, Nord Electro, Yamaha YC, Reface, or CK61, I have no idea. But I think I'll describe it this way, as a scaled-down organ engine. You do have on-screen versions of physical organ controls like drawbars and controls for chorus, vibrato, and percussion. The drawbars are familiar to me, but the non-drawbar controls are a little bit different than what I've seen on any of those organ clones that I've mentioned. Now, FYI, while the on-screen versions of these physical controls are nice to have, they're not very easy to use in a live scenario. Now, there are 3 different organ interface screens for the organ flute voices. One is definitely recognizable to me as a Hammond B3, and the other is a common home organ. Then there is a white one that is only referred to as Euro. I'm not sure if that's meant to be a Farfisa or possibly something else, but it does have the same drawbars as the Hammond does. Now, note that there's no Vox or church organ flute options. There are Vox and church organ samples on the keyboard, quite a few, but those are sampled sounds, so they're not things that have drawbars that you can adjust on the fly. I do intend on doing a deep dive video into the organ flutes later on, but for now I'm just going to leave it as the organ flutes are super nice to have, and they are a big improvement over having nothing but pre-sampled voices. But in my opinion, it's still a bit inferior to an actual full-blown organ engine with physical drawbars and percussion controls like you would have on a clone wheel, including the Yamaha CK61, which does have all of those physical controls and features. So as you would expect, there are more voices on this keyboard than you're ever likely to use. Pretty much everything you can imagine is in there. And I was happy to see that there were over 40 pianos and electric pianos to choose from. The main piano voice on the PSR SX720 is a Yamaha Concert Grand that's been enhanced with super articulation. But what piano that was actually sampled from isn't explicitly indicated on Yamaha's website, at least nowhere that I've been able to find. The data list you can download does show that the main piano voices for the PSR SX920 do include CFX in the name, but for the PSR SX720, they do not. So given that difference, if I had to guess, I'm assuming that the piano voices for the 720 are possibly sampled from the Yamaha CF3 Grand. But the important thing to note here is that they've been enhanced for realism with super articulation, similar to how some samples were enhanced on the less expensive psr-e series, but with super articulation light. Whether I'm correct or not about the piano being sampled from the CF3, to be honest, I'm not really very concerned about it because it just sounds fantastic. And as I mentioned in the user interface section, given the massive selection of voices on this keyboard, being able to search easily using a text string that you can input is super helpful. Okay, so that's enough talking. Let's take a quick listen to all 1913 voices. Okay, just kidding. I'll pick a few voices for us to check out. So let's take a listen. So what did you think of the sounds on the PSR SX720? I've had this keyboard for a few months, and I still have only just scratched the surface of the available voices, but I'm super impressed with these. Having owned so many Yamahas, I did kind of know what to expect, and I wasn't surprised by how much I like these voices. But one thing that Yamaha has always done better than the competition, at least in my opinion, are all the extra sounds for other instruments, like horns, woodwinds, guitars, etc. These sounds were always good on my Yamaha PSR EW425, but these sounds on the PSR SX720 are a massive step up, and they sound amazing. Those sounds have always been super useful to me, actually, in my new band, where I often need to cover an extra instrument, even electric guitars, which I do a fair bit. They sound surprisingly realistic. Okay, splits, layers, and voice channels. As far as splitting or layering voices, you do that by basically assigning desired voices to a channel and then specifying the keyboard range for that channel. You've got 3 channels for your main or upper voices, right 1, right 2, and right 3. And those 3 channels can be split across 1 or 2 ranges on the keyboard. So you could have all 3 of those layered together across the same range of keys, or you could have right 1 and right 2 layered together somewhere in the middle or left of the keyboard, and right 3 by itself on the right side. Do note that you cannot have right 1 and right 3 layered together alone unless right 2 is just inactive. Then you've also got a left channel as well. that you can assign another voice and range to, but this channel stands on its own. It can't be layered with the others, and it will have a range on the keyboard that's to the left of the upper voices. Now, unlike other arrangers I'm familiar with, the left voice does not have to be this exact same range as the left-hand chord detection is. You can actually have a chord detection range on the far left-hand side of the keyboard, then a range to the right of that for the left one voice, and then one or two more ranges for your right voices. So the interface for setting these split points might take a little bit to get used to, but once you do, it's super easy. So just to go in here and give you a quick demo of that, if I press menu and I go to split and fingering, that's where you set this up. So right now, you can see either by the lights on the panel here that I've only got right one currently active. If I go back to the main screen, you'll also see that right one is currently the only one that's currently active there as well. If I turn this off there, it turns off here and vice versa. So super easy. Let me get back in here again. So if I want to enable the right two voice, I can do that. And then the right three voice, I can do that. Now it's automatically started to split them for me. Now, if I'm not using a left voice, basically the way you use this interface is the style, the left and the right. You can move left and right in the keyboard ranges here. So I'm going to move right three to the left and watch what happens. See, now all three of them are layered together. So I think it's a piano, some strings and a guitar or something. Now if I move right three to the right, that's what's going to split these up. So now that's going to be the range for right one and right two. So it's the piano and strings or whatever that is. And then right three, that's going to be that guitar voice. Now let's activate the left voice. Now you can see a left range is opened up. So I don't have any accompaniment on or anything yet. So I've got my left range, then my right one and right two, and then my right three. So the left sounds like that's some kind of a string section as well. Now if we want to see what those voices are, the buttons on the bottom are the ones that actually activate the voices. The buttons on the top are the ones that allow you to choose them. So if I press left, I can see I've got some kind of a pad for the left voice. Exit out of here. Right one is a concert grand, right two is strings, and right three was that guitar. So let me just get back out of here again. So now if I activate the accompaniment, now it says style and left. So right now those have the same range. But if I want to move the left to the right of the style, I can do that like this. So now I've got a section just for the chord detection. So that's what that is. And then I've got the section for the left voice. So that's that pad. And then I'm into the section with the strings and the piano. And then I've still got my right three section up here. And also FYI, once you set all of this up for whatever song you're working on or sound you're trying to create, and then you save it into a registration memory, all of these settings do get saved. Okay, harmony and arpeggios. Most arranger keyboards are going to have some built-in harmonies and arpeggios you can use, but when I saw how extensive the list was for the SX720, I was pretty amazed. Let's go in here and take a look at this. You've got 13 categories of harmony, echo, and arpeggios. So crazy number of categories, and then within each one of those, there are a pile of different options you can choose from. So if I just randomly pick a arpeggio here, and then I turn arpeggio on right there. So you can see you've got all of these different options to choose from. So there's tons in there to use. Now by default, those are going to apply to all of your upper voices. If I turn harmony on, it's going to be applied to right one, right two, and right three. But I can configure that by going into the settings, and instead of choosing auto, I can say I only want it on right one, or only want it on right two, or only on right three, whatever I like. So I'm pretty new to using keyboard harmony and arpeggio because I used to just play mostly piano and organ, but now that I'm in a pop rock band and I'm starting to play a lot of synth, I'm starting to use these quite a bit, and they're super handy to have. And actually, for example, one of the harmonies I've started using a fair bit, I use actually on guitar voices. So if I just go in here, and I'm going to choose just whatever electric guitar, I'll choose this one. Turn the harmony off for a second. So that'll work. and then I go back into the harmony. What I've started using a lot when I have to cover a second guitar part in a song is I'll go to the harmony section and I will choose 1+5. So that's basically a power chord, which allows me to just very quickly and easily play some power chords to back up the guitar player when it's needed. So for example, harmony's off right now. That's what that sounds like. What this is going to do for me is basically play a power chord. So it's going to play this, but with only me hitting the root note. I turn the harmony on. So now you can hear that's the chord as opposed to just the note. That's really, really handy. Okay, so voice editing. The Yamaha PSR SX720 offers a ton of voice editing capabilities. You can edit all sorts of things from within the mixer screen or within the voice part edit screen or voice part setup screen. In the mixer screen, you can quickly access things like your effects and levels. You can manage the relative volumes between your instruments, levels of chorus and reverb for everything, effects, EQ, cutoff and resonance, filter settings, that type of stuff. And you've got this screen for the panel voices, then for all the style instruments, for the multi-pads, for the song, and a master section as well. And there's 2 pages on here. So if I scroll to the next page, you can see I've got effects that I can use for the mic and for a guitar if I've got a guitar plugged in to the mic port. And also I can configure things for the auxiliary in port. Then if I go back to the voice part setup screen, you can edit a lot of the same things, but you can also go in here and say, I want a synthesizer to be monophonic or polyphonic, that type of stuff. And you can also do octave adjustment very quickly in here as well. And any of the settings that you make in either of those spots are going to get saved within your current registration if you choose to do so. But what if you actually wanted to, as opposed to just changing effects and levels and relative volumes and all of that kind of thing, what if you actually wanted to fine-tune the voice itself? Well, you can. That's actually with the voice edit feature. So if I go back in here, go to voice edit, you can edit a ton of stuff in here. You can edit the default volume, the touch sensitivity, the velocity limits, if is there any panel sustain. You can also configure a default harmony or arpeggio. You can configure just so much stuff. So like I said, if it was a synth, you can choose whether it's polyphonic or monophonic. You can set up portamento. You can set up all of your different modulation levels. Just tons of stuff. Filter, EQ, vibrato, and that's an insertion effect, and then your depth for the effect, and then EQ settings. And then once you're done customizing your voice, then you can save that as a user voice, and then call that up just like you would any of the built-in voices. So massive amount of fine-tuning available here if you're into doing that kind of thing. Okay, effects. Now, effects are another topic that is definitely going to require a separate deep dive video or even videos because there is just a massive amount to talk about, including the fact that you can actually edit existing effects and save them as custom user effects, which is awesome. And how you can have more than one insertion effect applied to your voices. So the list of effects available on the PSR SX720, there's 59 reverb presets and 30 available user slots. Chorus, there's 106 presets and 30 user slots. For DSP effects, which can be insertion effects into 9 blocks, more on that in just a bit, there are 322 DSP presets, which is crazy, and 30 user slots. For compressor, there's 5 presets and 30 user slots. Master EQ, 5 presets and 30 user slots. And part EQ, there's 28 parts. Then for mic and guitar, there's a noise gate, a compressor, and 3-band EQ. Now you can also specify variation effects. You can apply an effect to either system, which will apply that effect to all parts of the current song or style, or you can set it to be an insertion effect that only applies the effect to a specific song or style part. Now for insertion effects for your voices, there are multiple places where you can set these up. You can go into the mixer and go to effect, and then you can choose your effect in here. For example, on my piano, right now there's no effect. I'm going to turn chorus on. And then I can go in here and I can choose whatever effects I want and configure it, etc. And you can also get at these insertion effects on the voice part setup and voice edit screens to choose and configure a single insertion effect. But you can actually add multiple insertion effects to a single voice. You just have to know kind of how and where to do this. And you do it from this screen here, which is the mixer screen. I spent a bit of time when I first got my keyboard trying to figure this out because it's not super clear in the manual or the user interface. So on this mixer screen's effects tab, instead of just tapping the effect itself to bring it up and then choose one, you can actually go to assign part setting. When I do that, you've got all of these different blocks where you can put effects in. There's 9 of them all together. The first 6 blocks can be turned off, or they can be assigned to the right voices, the left voice, or different song channels. And that's the same for the first 6. Block 7 can be assigned to the microphone or to the song channels. And blocks 8 and 9 can be assigned to any of the different style parts, like the style rhythm, the style bass, that type of thing. Now, just a quick FYI, I do want to let you know about something that I discovered when I was trying to set up 3 effects to an organ flute voice, so chorus, distortion, and a rotary speaker. I'm going to demo this in detail, definitely, in a deep dive video into the organ flute voices, but just so you know, if you want to control, because if I go back to this screen here, you can see how I can apply multiple effects to the same voice. So I've got multiple on right 2 here, and I could layer up more and more with different effects on them. But the thing you need to know is if you want to control one of those DSP effects in real time using one of the assignable controls like a knob, a assignable switch, or a pedal, it seems that you can only control one of your effects that way, and it has to be the last one that you set up for that voice. And you have to do that in write 3 if you're going to have more than one effect going, and you want to control that effect with one of the assignable controls. So stay tuned on my channel. I'm going to be doing a deep dive video on that where I'll show you how to set up chorus, distortion, and a rotary speaker for an organ flute. Okay, so rhythms and accompaniment. So there are 450 styles available, and tons of genres are really well covered here. There's 410 pro styles, 37 session styles, 3 free play styles, and you have the ability to add new styles. Free play styles are kind of cool. They actually have no tempo or beat. They basically just are kind of floaty sounding pads that are still going to follow your chord changes, but there's no discernible tempo. Session styles attempt to be truer to their genre by playing more advanced genre-specific chords, riffs, and changes. So these can be cool and fun to experiment with, but you do have to be aware of what each one tends to do. For example, if you finger a simple major triad, you may get a jazzy 7th chord, which may or may not work with the song you are playing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of these advanced accompaniment features. First off, you've got lots of options for controlling your style playback, all with easily accessible direct access buttons. You've got 3 intros, 3 endings, 4 variations, a button to trigger a break, and then the typical sync start and sync stop buttons. You've also got a toggle switch where you can enable or disable fills for when you switch variations. And then there's also that OTS link button to toggle the link between switching variations and your one-touch voice settings being in sync or having nothing to do with each other. For chord fingering options, it's night and day compared to the entry-level PSR-E series, which I've always been frustrated at for only having 2 options. I do hope to do a deep dive video on my channel using all of these different modes, so I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to quickly go over them. And then I also want to let you know about some important extra features. So the PSR SX720 has 8 chord fingering modes. The first one is single finger. This is one of those wizard modes that I'm never a fan of. You can use specific key combinations to trigger chords with less fingers, but the notes you're playing are not necessarily part of the actual chord, and that, to me, is just not a good idea. Then there's fingered. This is the most common mode found on most keyboards, where you have to finger an entire chord in your left hand. Then there's multi-finger, which is kind of a bizarre one, actually. It's a combination of fingered and single finger, so it will detect either one. Then we've got fingered on bass. This works like fingered, except you can trigger a slash chord, so control the note that the bass is going to play by playing the appropriate chord inversion. Then full keyboard. This is a good option for pianists. This is going to detect chords using the entire range of the key bed, regardless of where the notes are played or what order they're played in, but you must play at least a triad, so 3 notes, for a chord to be detected. Then we've got AI fingered. This is the same as fingered, but allows you to trigger chords with less than 3 notes. While you can trigger a power chord, which is only 2 notes using fingered, so like a first and a fifth, with AI fingered, you can play any 2 notes and the keyboard will do its best guess on what you want. Then we've got AI full keyboard. This, in my opinion, is the best option for pianists because, like full keyboard, it uses the entire range of the key bed so you can actually get to play with your left hand. But this mode allows less than 3 notes to be played. Then we've got Smart Chord. This is another one of those wizardy modes, which is found on the cheaper PSR-E series, but this version I actually kind of like, and that's because it's much more advanced than the PSR-E series version. Smart Chord allows you to specify the key signature that you want to use for your song ahead of time, and then trigger the diatonic chords from that key signature just by playing the root note. That's where the functionality of the PSR-E series stops, but on the PSR SX720, you can actually customize this further to not only specify the key signature, but customize whether you want to have more advanced chords to be used based on a chosen genre. So the options in here are standard, pop, jazz, dance, or simple. So for example, if I go to the key of C major, so just all the white notes, and I go out here to the main menu so you can see what we're getting. If I play a C note, I'm getting a C major. If I play a D, I'm getting a D minor. So that's the diatonic chord in the key of C. If I go back in here and I switch the smart chord mode to, let's say, jazz, and I go back out and I play the C, I'm actually getting a C minor 7th add 9. D minor, I'm getting a D minor 7th add 9. So it basically gives you a more complicated chord. So what are the extra features the SX720 has for accompaniment? Well, first of all, we've got a really cool option for either of the full keyboard modes, and that is the manual bass option. So right now I'm in multi-finger mode, and the chord detection area is set to be the lower. I'm going to switch to full keyboard mode. And then I'm going to turn the chord detection area to be upper. Hang on, got to turn that reverb off. Now I can turn on manual bass, and what I'm going to have now is on the left, I'm going to have my bass, and then on the right, I'm going to have my piano. But if you go out here, if I finger a full chord with my left hand, it's not picking that up, and that's because I switched the chord detection area to be the right-hand side. So now it's going to use my right hand. So if I'm playing a bass line, it's using my right hand to detect the chords. That's pretty cool. Now, the second really cool feature is dynamics control. This allows you to adjust not just the volume of the accompaniment relative to everything else, but it also adjusts the intensity of how the accompanying musicians play their instruments. So basically, it adjusts their velocity. By default, this is mapped to the first live control knob. So if you want to bring up or bring down the intensity of the accompaniment without switching to a different variation, you can do that really easily and on the fly using one of the live control knobs. Now, one more interesting option offered by the SX720 is left hold. You can toggle this on or off with a direct access button here. If it's on and you have a left voice selected that is not a naturally decaying voice, then you can let go of the keys and the voice will keep playing as if you were still holding down the keys. So I turn that on, you can hear my bass is still going. As opposed to when it's off, it just has its natural decay. Here's just a very quick video demonstrating some style playing, including using the one-touch settings and dynamics control. Okay, registration memory. To sum this up quickly, the registration memory system on the PSR SX720 completely blows away any other system I've ever seen. When I chose to buy a PSR SX720 instead of a Yamaha CK61 as my next stage keyboard, to be honest, I didn't even research how the registration memory system even worked. But once I saw it and learned how to use it, I can't emphasize how awesome this system is. And after having used this with my band for a few live gigs, I can't even imagine having to go back to using a more conventional system like on the CK61 or on most stage keyboards, even though I used to think that one was pretty good. And it is, but this one's just better. So the registration system on the CK61, which Yamaha calls live sets, is actually really good and a very common way of doing this. You've got 8 live buttons on the front panel. Each one can call up a live set. And that's a registration holding all your settings. And then there are 20 pages of 8 live sets for a total of 160 available slots. You can navigate from page to page and use the buttons to call up your registration. So I would typically try to use 1 live set per song, but sometimes I'd need more than one. And so I'd have to try to make sure that they were stored on the same page so that it's easy to access them back and forth. So how is the PSR SX720 system better? Well, there are still 8 buttons to quickly and easily call up a registration, except there's a massive difference here. All 8 of these buttons are shared by one registration bank, which you can save under a custom name. So I'll use a song name to do that. And the only thing limiting the number of registrations in your keyboard is your keyboard's onboard memory. So if I open up the registration bank window, I can go and look up whatever song that I want. And then these are going to be the slots that are used for that song. So regardless of how many slots or variations I need for a song, I'm still going to use up this entire bank of 8 slots for that one song. So I might have some songs that have 3 or 4. You can see this one only has 2. But that way, this keeps all of those variations together in one place under the song name, which is awesome and super handy, not to mention really easy to find because the registrations are stored alphabetically. To accomplish this on the CK61, I would have to use 2 different registration slots and then have to make sure that they're on the same page so that I could navigate back and forth between them quickly and easily. And then as far as when it comes to play that song at a gig, I would have to know on the CK61 that they're in page number 7, positions 5 and 6 or something like that. As opposed to on this keyboard, you just look up the song by the song name and there they are. So super easy. Okay, playlists. You can create playlists of songs. So basically a list of these registrations, which are the songs, and sort that playlist in any order you like and then give it a name. So for example, I have an upcoming gig. We're going to be playing 2 sets. So I've got a set 1 and a set 2 playlist and then an encores playlist. So if I go into set 1, then those are the songs we're going to be playing. So I can load up the first one and then this is ready to go. Finish that song. Load up the second one. That one's ready to go. Super fast and super easy. So basically, this playlist system in combination with the way the registration memory works, where you are saving all of these as a song, this is a game-changing bit of functionality for me. I didn't even know about when I ordered my PSR SX720. So every time I've got a new gig, I just create whatever playlists I need, and then at the gig, it's 2 seconds to load the next song, so I don't have to go find them alphabetically. Or on the CK61, basically have it written down that the next song is in on page 3 and slot number whatever. So this is awesome. Okay, recording. For recording, you've got 3 main options. Audio, and you can save those in WAV, or 3 choices of different MP3 formats, or simple MIDI and multi-track MIDI. All of these are stored by default on the keyboard itself and can be replayed by using the player button up in the top left here. So audio recordings. For audio, that's typically been my go-to in the past, and they work really well on the PSR SX720. It's super easy to record. The recordings will include everything, including vocals and accompaniment, assuming your mic is connected to your keyboard. And there are also some extra things you can do with any audio file. If I just open up the player screen here, I've got an audio file chosen. So I can choose to turn on voice cancel. How well that works depends on the track itself. In my experience, voice cancel doesn't work that great on most songs, on most keyboards. Transpose. You can actually transpose up or down, which is a super cool feature. If you've got a backing track loaded for a band practice, then you can bump it up or down super quick and easy if you decide to transpose it on the spot, which is super handy. So for example, if I just press play, and I go to transpose. That is super cool. And what's really cool about it is that it doesn't really change the speed or anything. It just changes the pitch. That's really awesome. Then there's also time stretch. What time stretch is for? It's actually pretty cool. You can adjust the length of the track, and the keyboard is going to speed up or slow down the tempo to match. But the cool thing with that is it doesn't change the pitch in there either. This is really neat. If I hit play again. I would have expected the pitch to jump when I made it go faster. But that's awesome. Now you also got lyrics and text. You can actually include lyrics and a text file to display on the screen as you play if you want. Then for MIDI, you've got the two options, simple MIDI and multi-track MIDI. So for quick recording, that's going to be the simple one. Now remember, for any MIDI recording, that's not going to include the mic or any vocals or anything. It's just going to include what's happening on your keyboard. This is a great way to quickly capture an idea with the simple one. The multi-track MIDI recording is actually really impressive. It's a 16-track recorder. This is way beyond the scope of this review, but I do plan on doing a deep dive into this feature at some stage. But you can do things like mute and mix parts, continue adding and layering new instrument tracks, step editing, quantizing, and all sorts of cool features. Okay, the Chord Looper or sequencer. This is one of the features besides the key action that actually drew me to move up to the PSR SX720 from the PSR SX600. This feature allows you to record a chord sequence by playing the chords in your left hand at any tempo that you like, and then have the keyboard play that chord sequence back using any of the built-in styles at any tempo. So you can change the style and tempo at any time. That's going to free up your left hand so you don't have to worry about making chord changes on the keyboard. You're just free to play with both hands. And you can loop the sequence to keep repeating it, so it's a really handy way to practice soloing, comping, or writing a melody over a certain progression, so pretty cool. And you can do this really quickly and easily. So for example, if I bring up the Chord Looper screen, if I hit record, it's just going to enable sync start, so I can just start playing. And if I hit record stop, I can stop this at any time, and then I can hit memory, and I'll choose memory position 1, so you can see I got my C, D minor, and C. And then if I want to play that back, I just press the on-off button, either here or on the screen. Then when I hit start, it's going to start playing this chord sequence instead of following my chord changes. And then I can play with both hands, and anything I do on the left isn't going to change the chords that are being played because it's just following this pattern. See, I'm playing a C there, but it's still recognizing the D minor. That's super cool. So after having been super impressed by very similar functionality on the new Roland Go Keys keyboards, which sell for about 1/4 of the price of the SX720, I was really excited to see this feature because my intended use for this would have been to record a backing track for an entire song as an alternative to manually recording a backing track using the 16-track MIDI recorder. Now this is something you can do easily on the Go Keys. You can even easily program intros, fills, changes, and style variation. So you've got a complete usable backing track you can use with any of the styles. Well, as it turns out, the PSR SX720's Chord Looper is a little bit more limited than the chord sequencer on the Go Keys. So on the SX720, you can record an entire song's chord sequence to one of the 8 banks in your current group, and then start playback. And that will work for an entire song, but you're going to have to manually trigger any of the style variations, intros, or endings. On the Go Keys, you could program all of that in to the chord sequence. Now, there is a way that you can, well, sort of, accomplish building a song by using a bank of 8 chord sequences that are tied to 8 registrations, where you use the registrations to progress through your song by calling up the appropriate chord sequence in order and programming the style variations within those registrations. So, for example, let's say that was my intro, and it was tied to this registration, then I'd have the second registration bank tied to that chord sequence, which was maybe the verse, and I could have that automatically be in a different style variation. But That's a lot more work. It's pretty complicated and clunky, and it's limited to only having 8 song parts, which may or may not work for your song. So is the Chord Looper a handy and cool feature still? Well, yeah, but it's just not as cool as I was hoping for. If I decide to make a backing track using the PSR SX720, I'm going to be using the 16-track recorder instead. Either way, though, I do intend to do a deep dive video on the Chord Looper down the road on my channel, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so connectivity. There's a lot of great connectivity on the Yamaha PSR SX720, but there is one thing that is missing that I was actually kind of baffled about. And no, it's not the fact that there's no Bluetooth. I personally don't really care much either way about Bluetooth, even though a lot of people do. But I'll get to the missing item in a bit. I'm going to go over everything else first. But before I do that, something to mention that I always like to see, and that is all the ports on the back are labeled on the top. That makes it super easy to find connections without having to go behind the keyboard, tilt it, flip it, etc. I don't know why all keyboards don't do this. So here's what we've got for connectivity. We've got a 1/4 inch stereo headphone port that is thankfully on the front of the keyboard, so super handy. Proper 1/4 inch left and right line outs for connecting to external audio equipment like PAs, amps, mixers, or audio interfaces. There's a 1/8 inch stereo auxiliary in port for streaming in external audio from a device like a phone or a tablet. There's a 1/4 inch port for connecting a guitar or mic, which is super cool. There's also a switch to configure the port for one or the other, and there's also a gain knob. There's 2 1/4 inch foot pedal ports. Those can be configured for either switch functions, so sustain, turning rotary speaker on and off, that type of thing, or expression functions using an expression pedal, so controlling your volume, portamento time, etc. Note that the SX720 is not compatible with half pedaling for sustain. There's 5-pin MIDI in and out ports. These ports allow you to either control another device's sounds using the SX720's keybed, or use another keyboard as a controller to trigger sounds on the SX720. These are ports I can totally see myself using, and they were actually another reason for me to move up from the PSR SX600, which doesn't have those. There's a USB to device port for connecting a flash drive for backups or transferring files or installing updates. And there's a USB to host port for sending MIDI data to a device like a tablet or a computer. This is where we get to the missing feature that completely baffles me. Almost all of Yamaha's newer keyboards, even the $200 Yamaha PSR E383, have an audio interface built into the USB port, but the PSR SX720 does not. I have no idea why Yamaha didn't include this, because doing so takes away the following features. You can't connect the keyboard directly to a phone to record high-quality videos with direct audio just using a USB cable. You can't transmit high-quality audio directly to a DAW app on a device just using a USB cable. And you can't stream external audio into the keyboard from a device, which not only prevents you from having another option for streaming in external audio, but also means if you are using the SX720 to trigger sounds on an external MIDI source, those sounds are not going to come straight back over that connection to the keyboard. Now, you can still do all of those things, but you're going to need audio cables out from your left and right line out ports, and you're going to need an external audio interface like a Focusrite Scarlett or my UA Volt that I use. Now, as I mentioned, there is no Bluetooth. I would never use Bluetooth MIDI on any keyboard because of lag. And while Bluetooth in for streaming in audio wirelessly from a device is pretty convenient for home keyboards, given that I use my keyboard on stage, to be honest, I'm happy this feature is missing. I actually once let a friend take my phone at a gig to take pictures and some video, and suddenly audio from the phone started coming out of the PA system because it was paired with my Bluetooth-enabled keyboard. So overall, the connectivity is good. The keyboard has everything I need, left and right line outs, a mic in port, 5-pin MIDI in and out ports, and 2 pedal ports. It's just a shame and kind of strange that it's missing that built-in audio interface. Okay, speakers. The speakers on the Yamaha PSR SX720 are nothing short of spectacular for a portable keyboard. Up until I got my SX720, the best speakers I'd ever heard from a portable keyboard were the 24-watt speakers in my Yamaha PSR EW425. But the 30-watt total 2 by 13 centimeters and 2 by 5 centimeter speakers on the PSR SX720 are even better. They face the player, so facing up, which is always my preference, and they're super clear and super loud. You could actually play a small cafe with just these speakers and nothing else if you wanted to. And given that they face the player, they're actually usable as personal monitors in larger rooms, as long as it's not a huge gig with a huge PA system. Here's a quick demo on the speakers, just as picked up by my iPhone's built-in mic. Okay, so other features, multipads. The PSR SX720 has 4 multipad buttons that you can use to trigger a melodic phrase or playback of an audio file. They're over here on the right-hand side of the keyboard. And you can choose to loop playback continually until you stop it, or you can have the playback stop after it plays once. You can record and edit MIDI multipad files as phrases, and with those, you can even have the playback automatically transposed to the current chord being played in the chord detection area. Or you can play back an audio file. I found that to be actually pretty handy for occasional sound effects or phrases that you only need once in a while. This way you can record it and trigger it when you want without having to use up an area on the keyboard for some type of a voice. FYI though, if it's an actual melodic phrase that needs to be played in time, this will only really be usable if you're playing a style. For me, while I'm playing in a band, I can only really use this for quick one-time things that don't need to persist in perfect time with the music. This is yet another deep dive video that I'm looking forward to doing down the road. Okay, the style creator. So with the Yamaha PSR SX720, you can actually edit styles, or you can even create your own. This is a super cool pile of functionality that I honestly don't know a lot about, but I do have to say creating one from scratch is likely to be a colossal amount of work and will require a fair bit of experience. That being said, it does allow you to start with any of the existing styles and then make modifications and then save that to a new style. So that's probably the way to go. So while I would never see myself going to the work of creating a style from scratch, I could totally see myself using this to make simple edits to the existing styles. Let's say there's a style that's perfect for my song, except there's this one instrument that I just can't stand. Well, instead of just muting that during playback, which you can do, I can use the style editor to quickly and easily replace that instrument with a different one of my choice and save it as a user style. Or let's say I want the phrase that instrument plays to be a little bit different. I can go in and re-record a phrase and even do some step editing to get it perfect, and then save that as a user style. I did play with this briefly. I chose a style, I revoiced a phrase from a horn to an organ, and I re-recorded the phrase that was being played, and it worked pretty nicely, so yet another deep dive video for my channel down the road. But if you're interested in tinkering with your styles, the PSR SX720 can do that for you. So what's missing or could be improved? The Yamaha PSR SX720 is by far the most feature-packed keyboard I have ever owned or even reviewed. It has features that I never even imagined wanting or needing, but now I think I'm getting a little bit spoiled. That being said, there are a couple of things that I would define as reasonably significant that are missing or could be improved. The first is the lack of that audio interface built into the USB port. As I mentioned in the connectivity section of this review, that does add a ton of functionality, and the fact that Yamaha has been including this feature in almost all of their keyboards and digital pianos in the last few years, even the $200 US Yamaha PSR E383 has it, just kind of leaves me confused as to why it was left out of such an otherwise full-feature keyboard. And something that I would love to see added to the PSR SX720 are physical slider controls. These could be used to control all sorts of settings in real time, like attack, decay, whatever, but more importantly, at least to me, because I'm a huge Hammond organ fan, give you the ability to control those organ flute drawbars more easily. Yamaha went to all the length of adding a basic organ engine to the keyboard, which is fantastic, but the on-screen drawbars are not easy to use in a live situation. I'd even say they're not really usable in a live situation. And I have done some preliminary research on whether you could use an external controller with sliders to control the organ flute drawbars on the SX720, but apparently that's either not doable or would be extremely challenging to try and get that to work. Okay, so the competition or alternatives. To be honest, I'm a bit new to this high-end arranger keyboard market, so as a result, I'm definitely not an expert. But the keyboards I see the Yamaha PSR SX line compared to most often would definitely be the Korg PA series. As far as the PSR SX720 goes, you'd likely be comparing that to the Korg PA600. There's also a Korg PA700 that's quite a bit more expensive and would probably be more comparable to the Yamaha PSR SX920. So the Yamaha PSR SX720 at about $1,600 US versus either the Korg PA600 at about $1,500 US or the Korg PA700 at $2,400 US. So when I first started writing this review, I had never even seen a Korg PA in person. Within days of getting ready to post this review, I actually was visiting my local music store, and over in the used section, there was a Korg PA700. Based on the prices, I would assume that comparing a Korg PA600 to the PSR SX720 would be more appropriate. But since I had the chance to check out this PA700 for a few minutes, I thought I'd just make some general observations. The sounds, I tested pianos, electric pianos, and organs, were really good. From my brief test, I'd say they're probably on par with the PSR SX720 sounds. The speakers sounded fantastic, and they're 25 watts per side for a total of 50 watts, so those probably would outperform the speakers on the PSR SX720. The menu screen is also a full-color touchscreen, but it is clearly an older technology and nowhere near as nice or clear as the PSR SX720 screen and user interface. Then with the key action, I was actually kind of surprised here. The key action on the PA700, to be quite honest, is more on par with the entry-level Yamaha PSR-E series keyboards. Those actions aren't bad, but the FSB action on the SX720 is a significant step up in quality and playability, at least in my opinion. So while I obviously can't give you a fair opinion from such a quick glance, I can safely say right off the bat, I personally would not pay $800 US more for the PA700, which is a keyboard that has a much lesser feeling key action. So I would rule out the PA700 based on that alone. Given that the PA600 sells for about the same as the PSR SX720, if I was willing to go with a lesser action, then instead of getting the PA600, I would probably just choose to get the PSR SX600 and save about $500 US. But again, this is all based on about a 10-minute look in store at the PA700. I will keep an eye on that to see if it sells or not, because if it's still there in a couple of months, I may find the time to rent it and try to do a comparison video. So aside from the Korg PA line, what I can comment on in much more detail are all the factors that led me to choose the PSR SX720 over the other two keyboards I was considering. I already outlined earlier in this review why I moved up to the 720 from the PSR SX600, but now I'll outline why I chose the PSR SX720 over the Yamaha CK61, especially since I was looking for a stage keyboard. The CK61 actually is a stage keyboard, and the SX720 is at $1,600 US, and the CK61's only $1,000 US. So I previously owned and really liked a Yamaha CK61. I almost went out and just bought another one until I started considering the PSR SX line. And the main reason I started looking at the PSR SX line was to try and reduce the number of keyboards that I need. Since I was used to using my Yamaha DGX670 at home for practice, because of its arranger features, which are great for practicing with, it occurred to me that if I could find a stage keyboard that also had arranger features, then maybe one keyboard can fulfill both my stage keyboard and home keyboard needs. So I began looking at the PSR SX600 because it sells very close to the price of the CK61. Now, as I mentioned earlier, since I wanted to keep this next purchase for the long run, I moved up from the SX600 to the SX720 for all those extra features, most notably the key action. Aside from the arranger features that I knew would meet my home practice needs, as far as stage keyboard needs, I knew it was going to have great sounds. I knew I'd like the key action, and I knew it had all the connectivity I needed, but I was a little bit hesitant because the SX720 is not a stage keyboard, and the CK61 is. But then when I thought a little bit more about that, one of the main advantages of a stage keyboard like the CK61 is that there are tons of physical controls to modify your sounds quickly and easily on the fly. So adjusting effects, EQ, etc. Using the physical controls instead of having to deep dive into a menu system to do those things is a stage keyboard need. But then as I thought a little bit more about that, I thought about all the times that I use my CK series on live gigs, and I realized I never tend to touch any of those controls. Maybe I'm a lazy keyboard player, but I like to configure the sounds I want for a song, call them up, and then just play. Other than occasionally changing drawbar settings for an organ voice, I pretty much never modify any of those settings. So at that point, I decided I can sell my DGX 670 and then dive in, get the PSR SX720, and see if I can get by with one keyboard. So is that a good decision, and how has this worked out for me? Way better than I'd hoped. I'm not missing any of those live controllers other than the drawbars. I love the big full-color touchscreen and the user interface, and I was totally blown away with how much better the registration memory system is, especially in conjunction with the playlist functionality. After having used the PSR SX720 on quite a few gigs with my band, to be honest, I would probably never want to go back to something like the CK. Now, are there any areas where the CK61 beats out the SX720? Absolutely. First of all, it's $600 cheaper. It has the built-in USB audio interface. It also has those physical drawbars and organ controls, which I really wish the SX720 had, but I can get by without them. And the CK61 is far more portable. It's insanely light and small and can even run on batteries. So yes, the PSR SX720 did cost me about $600 more, and it is missing a couple of things off my perfect keyboard wish list, but it pretty much outdoes the CK61 in so many areas that I totally made the right decision. And like I said, I'm keeping this keyboard for the long haul, so I was able to sell my DGX 670, and now I can get by using one keyboard at home for practice and recording, as well as stage use with my band. So the verdict on the Yamaha PSR SX720. Well, you can probably guess what my verdict is. The Yamaha PSR SX720 is amazing. There are tons of fantastic sounds, including a basic organ engine. I absolutely love the FSB key action. It's a great compromise for being able to play piano, organ, and synth. The full-color touchscreen user interface is an absolute joy to use. The registration and playlist system is jaw-dropping good. The arranger features are fantastic. There's a 16-track MIDI recording feature. Audio recording, there's the Chord Looper, it has all the connectivity I need, and it has fantastic speakers. And while it's not as portable as the CK61, it's still portable, so not hard to move around or set up and take down. So I can enthusiastically recommend the Yamaha PSR SX720. So if you want to check out current prices in your area for the PSR SX720 or any of the other products that I mentioned in this video, I'll leave links in the description below so you can do that. And I'll also have links to online piano training that worked really well for me that I can highly recommend. So if you like the content, please feel free to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. It does really help me out. Thanks again for stopping by, and happy keyboard playing and happy keyboard shopping. Have an awesome day.